Bradley, and today we're going to be talking about animated awareness, which is cartoon characters and the LGBT community and representation. So we're going to start off with a little bit of an icebreaker, a little bit of an audience participation. So I'm just going to ask for a couple of cartoon characters that were meaningful to y'all growing up. So does anyone have any examples?
I liked Batman because he was a loner and he fought crime.
Awesome. What was your name?
John?
All right. And you said you like Batman. And he was a loner and fought crime. All right. Do we have any others?
I liked Wonder Woman
All right. And why did you like Wonder Woman?
because she was a strong woman. You know, you wanted to be that when you were a kid. Strong.
Strong woman? Okay, perfect. All right, you like Wonder Woman because she was a strong woman. And that is a perfect segue on why representation is important. So today we're going to be talking about cartoon characters and the history of LGBT characters in cartoon and animation. So we're going to be starting with, we're going to be starting with early Japanese animation. So we're going to be looking at the 1967 cartoon Princess Knight. So this was a cartoon created that ran for one season and was based on the manga by Osamu Tezuka. So the animation of Princess Knight focused on a little girl that was saved by a prince really young, and she basically grew up. She didn't grow up like wanting to search for the prince or find him. She wanted to be a prince herself, which really showed and represented androgyny and gender fluidity in early Japanese animation. So the show brought on the concept of the boy and the girl heart in Japanese animation. So the boy and the girl heart is different from gender itself. It's basically a person could have either a boy or a girl heart, whether they were male or female, or even they could have both, which really brought in the idea of gender fluidity, gender queerness, androgyny, which is a huge influencer on later Japanese animation and representation. So we're going to look on basically a couple other shows that were directly influenced by Princess Knight, and one is definitely Revolutionary Girl Utena. So, oh, I'm having issues. Okay. So Revolutionary Girl Utena had a direct influence from Princess Knight. It was a 1997 anime created with the main character that had a very similar story to Princess Knight. So it was about a girl that was saved by a prince very young, and instead of wanting to find that prince, she wanted to be the prince and save other women. So that was her main motive throughout the show, is to just save damsel in distress, to save people that were in distress, and be that strong figure. And it didn't matter whether she was male or female. So this really brings on the idea of gender fluidity through that animation. And this show also tried to represent sexual fluidity as well, as most of the girls in her high school are in love with her even though she is a woman. And the main character herself, the girl Utena, actually has relations with a woman and a male throughout the show and ends up with a female character. So sexual fluidity is super important throughout that show. There's an idea that sexual nature is actually fluid, and it's not contained to heterosexual relations, which is extremely important and well represented early on. So we also look at Ouran High School Host Club, which is a little bit later. It was a 2006 anime that focused on androgyny. The main character is actually seen as a woman by some of the characters and a male by the others. So it doesn't really matter. And in the first couple episodes, the character themselves actually goes through and has this big speech on why gender doesn't matter and why it's really about personality, and how she doesn't care whether people see her as a male or a female, that it doesn't matter. It's about it's the inside that counts. So this is extremely important and really good for representation. Also, if we look at Yuri on Ice, which is a really extremely recent, it's a couple of years old anime. It's about two male characters, and the show itself is about their increasing romantic relations, and it's not seen as spectacular because they're gay. It's shown just as a natural romance that just builds, and it's really well done. It's really shown to explore how sexuality isn't defined because you're gay. It's defined by love, and that is something really beautiful. We're going to move on from Japanese animation to Japanese animation brought over to America, and how that influenced, how American ideals influenced Japanese animation and the censorship. So we look at Sailor Moon as a case study, which is a really good example of how rampant the censorship of Japanese animation was, and how rampant the censorship of gay characters was. So we have these two examples. The first example is of Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune, that were a lesbian couple in the Japanese show, but when it was brought over for the English dub, they actually changed it to cousins, which was extremely confusing. So I have a small media clip that I'm going to show. It's about 10 seconds, and it basically just shows the difference of the original English dub, which was made in '95, and then in a dub that was made a couple of years ago that showed the difference between the censorship and the real translation. So we're going to look at that real quick.
Oh, look! Here come Amara and Michelle. Oh, great. Why do you think they've entered the contest? They're girls and cousins, too.
Look over there. It's Haruka and Michiru. Oh, wow.
Do you think they entered the contest, too?
As a couple? Well, I have to say, they sure look perfect together.
How'd you guys meet then?
Alright, so that is a really good example of how censorship in America really changed the whole storylines of shows. These two characters were deeply in love and very affectionate towards one another, and it really made that English translation confusing because they had all these romantic relations, but then they would tell children, hey, it's okay, they're just cousins. So that was a really weird censorship move. Another one that they made in the same show was these two characters right here, Zoisite and Kunsite, were two of the main villains, and they were also in a gay relationship with each other. In the American version, they changed one of the characters' gender to female to make it a heterosexual relationship, which was extremely confusing due to several storyline points, but also confusing to children. So these censorship were very, very rampant in the early to late 90s in the US. So luckily they've gotten better, but it was extremely confusing. It would change storylines. They would often just completely scrap storylines that had gay characters in it, gay couples in it. But luckily we've seen an increase. So next we're going to look at queer representation in America. So at first, in the late 90s, during the censorship era to the early 2000s, you see a lot of gay characters in adult comedies, such as South Park, Simpsons, Family Guy, things like that, where they were kind of seen as one-dimensional stereotypes, where they're one-dimensional, characterized as often very... the female lesbian characters were seen as butch, and the gay male characters were seen as very flamboyant and kind of girly, and these stereotypes were really offensive and just one-dimensional. But a good example of a decently shown a couple of gay people were in The Simpsons with Patty and Smithers. There were two main villains in the show, and they were shown as something more than just their sexuality. They're shown as three-dimensional characters in the show, which was really well done. But you do see this kind of like stereotypical thing going on with a lot of adult comedies, which was something really negative, but started to decrease, and you finally started to see queer representation in children's shows, such as The Legend of Korra. So The Legend of Korra had two main characters main female characters in the show who started off in a relationship with a male character. So you see that after they broke up, they bonded together, and then eventually there was a romantic twist, and eventually they became a couple in the season's finale. You see in this show, you start to see this increasing of representation, but you still see this finale problem, which is something that was a huge problem in the early 2000s. Basically, there was such a stigma against gay and lesbian characters that they would basically wait till the finale, the last episode, so that they weren't taken off the network. The Legend of Korra, even though they didn't show the relationship till the finale, they were still taken off of Nickelodeon completely. The last season was only online because they had that gay relationship. Now, there are good and bad things about how the Legend of Korra represented queer characters, how they did have that finale problem, which is still rampant in shows today about for representation, but they did lead the way to shows such as Cartoon Network that do have so many shows that have good representation. You see shows like Adventure Time, which still has that finale problem, but did have a huge leadway in representation of characters. You see the main two characters, Marceline and Bubblegum, they did admit to being a couple beforehand, but they had broken up. And so you see that not all gay relationships necessarily work out. They're like normal relationship. You see that representation of difference in relationships, and that there can be negatives, there can be goods, there can be bads, but you also get shows like Steven Universe, which shows a variety of genderqueer, androgynous, and multiple sexualities in their characters. You see some of the main characters, these two, Ruby and Sapphire, they're two aliens that are both feminine, and you don't know that they're two separate beings because in the first two seasons you actually see them fused together as one being, because that's how the aliens represent their relationships. So you actually see them as a gay couple before you know that they are actually two separate people. You see their relationship first, which is something very beautiful. Steven Universe also does a good job at showing different kinds of characters. You've got so many different body types, you've got so many different sexualities, which is something so beautiful and so representative and so healthy for young children to see. It was also the first gay wedding shown on a children's cartoon, which was something beautiful. So if we look at the future of queer representation, it starts with more LGBTQ people in roles making animation. We've come so far, but we still have so much farther to go. So if we just see more people in those roles making a difference, we're going to see more representation, which is so important, because we see these children seeing that there are people like them, that there are people of their same sexuality, of their same gender, and that's why I had some of you name some cartoon characters that were important to you. Because you see, like, you named Wonder Woman, who was a strong woman that you could look up to, which is something so important, that those kids have something to look up to. So you see that they have this, these things that they can look up to, but you also see that it's normalization. It's not just a reveal at a finale, that we see these relationships normalized and shown on TV. We see them shown in different ways, and show that there are differences, but there are also, you can have something to relate to, which is something so important. So finally, I just want to, so I just want to finish off by saying that representation is so important. And we talked a little bit about different cartoons and different how far we've come. So I just want to finish up by saying we've come so far, but we still have so much farther to go. I think that we can do such a great job, and I think that representation is just so important in cartoons. So thank you so much for watching. I've been Savannah Bradley. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Do you have any questions?
What is your favorite cartoon character when you were a kid?
I grew up watching Adventure Time, and I was really a huge fan of Marceline and Bubblegum, and so it was such a huge deal to me when they got together, because it was such a good representation for me, because as a bisexual woman, I just like really loved seeing that, because Bubblegum was bisexual. She had relationships with men and women, so just to see that that was okay was something so beautiful for me. Does anyone have any other questions?
Nope.
All right, thank you so much.